Lionel Messi is going to win the MLS MVP this season, but who could possibly catch him? Who's in second? And why is it an ex-Premier League footballer? Today we're covering the biggest stories and surprises so far through 12 games in the MLS season, including allegations of a coach punching a player. Yeah, I think MLS After Dark is alive and well. Finally, we'll talk about which manager in Major League Soccer is going to be fired first this season, and who we think is the Thomas Tuchel terrorist equivalent in MLS. All of that ahead on the It's Called Soccer podcast with Jake Landau and Tom Godwin. Today we are uncovering the truth about the 2024 MLS season, the biggest surprises, the best stories, some of the best and worst of the new changes with the referees and the rules in Major League Soccer, and who will be the MVP. Second to Messi, because we know one player is winning it at the current rate. So first up, we have to talk about the biggest surprises and best storylines of Major League Soccer so far. I think for me, it's going to start in the losers bracket, Tom. Caleb Porter and the New England Revolution. I mean, I would be shocked if Caleb Porter wasn't already on the hot seat here, but New England, 7 points in 11 matches, one of the wealthiest owners in MLS, and one of the historically most winningest coaches in New England. Is New England on your radar for biggest bad surprises, or what really stands out to you so far this season?
Oh, absolutely. They've been terrible this season. I have actually been to only one MLS game, and it was Atlanta hosting New England. And New England got blown off the field by an Atlanta team who struggled this year. They were not good in that game. They fell apart the second they conceded. They've done that every single game I've watched for them. The second they concede a goal, they're just done. They fold. It's really been disappointing to watch. I think there's more talent on that team than they're showing too, so it's bad in New England.
Yeah, I'm sure you see this with Atlanta United, who I'm about to talk about, but New England has a lot of injuries as well, so I feel like there is some time. Our last question of this episode is going to be, who's the first MLS coach to get fired this season? Caleb Porter, I mean, he keeps losing, isn't looking good, but I have to give him some credit just because of how many players New England is missing. On the flip side, on the top of the table, I have to shout out Pablo Mastroeni and RSL. Take a bow, team. I mean, top of the Western Conference. Nobody saw this coming. They have a really solid squad. Mastroeni has been with the team for a long time. He's been able to build the squad how he wants. He has a tactic and a strategy that he's implemented, and they do really, really well. Also in the West, the Loons, Minnesota United, are right behind them. They have 2 games in hand up on RSL. Their manager, I think, is one of the best stories so far in MLS this season. 32-year-old Eric Ramsey. He's a Welsh coach, has never played professionally, but made his way through Swansea and the Manchester United. He was an assistant under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who else? Eric Ten Hag and Ralph Ragnick. Comes to Minnesota. They're in second place. Solid team. I hate this because he's younger than me. I'm 33. I was okay, Tom, like Kevin Sullivan, 14-year-olds getting signed to MLS contracts. That's fine. I'm over it. Like, I've been older than professional players for a while now, but I draw the line at coaches being younger than me. What is happening with these coaches in the Western Conference?
They're doing amazing things. I think it helps that LAFC is down right now and Seattle is down right now, and I think Portland should probably be better than where they are right now as well. But these coaches are doing a good job of what they've got, especially in Minnesota, where you've got the ongoing Reynoso drama, where I guess he's returning to the team today, but they're still saying he's not able for selection for a while, and he's probably getting sold, and you're trying to play a whole season without literally your best player, your DP10, and you're still playing.
Who doesn't care about your team at all?
Yeah, exactly. The one who keeps no-showing to your preseason trainings, and all of a sudden you're just blowing the entire Western Conference away without any fanfare whatsoever. It's spectacular to watch. And RSL is kind of similar. They're kind of a one-man show right now, and it just doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, I don't know what Emmanuel Reynoso is going to be doing to get his like graces back with the team. How do you even come back from that at this point? It's like there's probably been 3 or 4 instances at this point where he's just kind of blown off the club and said, I don't care about you. I don't care about playing. I don't want to be there.
I don't think that there's a way to come back from it. There's no way his teammates trust him at this point, right?
No, not at all. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, what kind of rehabilitation of your image or like going back to the club is going to fix how everyone there feels about you? The players, the coaching staff, the fans, especially. I mean, goals are great, winning is great, but the team's doing that without you. Like
Yeah.
nobody's clamoring for you to come back when you're doing so well. So I think it's a really bad situation just for him. Like if the team was losing and they needed him, maybe I could see a better pathway. But the fact that he's got to come back to a winning team who's having a great time without him, that makes it all the more difficult to come back. Tom, what's happening in Atlanta United?
It's bad right now. They've lost. This is the first time they've ever lost three home games in a row. It's you know it's hard to watch this team and not just sort of think something is very wrong with the culture or with the setup of this team because they're objectively. I think this is probably one of the most talented rosters Atlanta's ever had, and probably like top five in the MLS for me overall. Just looking at the objective quality of players, but they're not scoring goals. They have not fixed the defensive issues. The midfield play is atrocious. Even bringing in new players, new DPs, new center backs, new defensive midfielders, it's not helped anything. It's just rough to watch. You sort of wonder where center backs are on plays. You wonder how the midfield looks this disjointed. They get to the attacking third, everyone's just taking at least a second too long on the ball. It doesn't seems like everyone's trying to force it and nothing's coming off. Pineda's got to be on the hot seat at this point because it just doesn't look good.
Yeah, I mean, just being a fan of the team yourself,
Mm-hmm.
what's your view on Pineda? Is it his fault? Should he get more time? Like, what's happening within this team?
I think that you do have to give him a little bit more time just because they've been so banged up at the back. And you bring in two new center backs. You bring in Derek Williams. You bring in Gregerson from Sweden. Sorry. When you bring in Gregerson, he looks fantastic. He's so athletic. He reads the game so well. Almost looks like a perfect Miles Robinson clone. Now he's in concussion protocol. Has been for a month. Atlanta hasn't been able to replace him. Williams has got a calf injury. He's not coming back anytime soon. You're now relying on 18-year-old Noah Cobb to anchor your back line with a guy who you've already benched twice in Louis Abram. Beyond that, Brooks Lennon was never a great defender. Caleb Wiley is young and still shows his age quite a bit, I think, when he plays. And then you've got a brand new defensive midfield pairing in front of them. So I think you've got to give time for this new defensive back line to get healthy and gel just to see if that fixes things. Because the talent's there. It's just not clicking. I do think that there's got to be
Yeah.
something done about the offense, though, because last year, even when the defense was horrible, they were at least scoring 4 goals a game, and they're not doing that right now. And I don't understand that one.
Yeah. And I feel for Atlanta United fans as a historically Metro Stars fan, the original black and red team
Mm-hmm.
in MLS. Atlanta United has always kind of been this team that I love to hate in the Eastern Conference. They come in, they win MLS Cup. The Red Bulls slash Metro Stars have never done that in their entire history, being one of the originals in MLS. But at the same time, to know that this is the first time in Atlanta United history that they've lost three straight home matches. I agree with you. Pineda has to be on the hot seat, or else
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of lost your ambition as a club.
Yeah. Well, and last game against DC United, they were the better team in that game. The only thing they didn't do well was just, pass out of a press and then mark Christian Benteke in the box repeatedly, which
I mean, DC
seems like the only
United.
thing you have to do against DC.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is they don't do anything tricky. They don't do anything with style. It's I guess we'll just get this stat out of the way because I want to talk about Christian Benteke a little bit later when we talk about MVPs other than Messi. But this is insane to me. So in the MLS season so far, he's won 134 aerial duels. The next best player is a center back who's won 54. It's
That's
it's
nuts.
crazy. And this is emblematic of how DC United plays as well. It's not just crossing into the box and him scoring with his head. By the way, I'm pretty sure his hat trick last night was all with his head, all three goals.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so, but they're also booting it up to him and goal kicks. Like he is their entire direction of the team and how they play. I don't understand how you like. Obviously, he does it very well, and it's hard to stop it.
Mhm.
But if you're a team preparing for that, you kind of know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's problem last night was that you're running a back three with Caleb Wiley and Noah Cobb as two of your center backs. The average age of your back line is under 20 years old. That's not a recipe for success against
Yeah.
Christian Benteke. So anytime that you get Benteke isolated, he's just going to dunk on whoever is trying to mark him. And DC has the players on the wings to take advantage of, like, isolate players to give Benteke the matchup he wants, and that's just all he needs to do damage. It's really spectacular to watch that DC team play because they don't seem like they're doing anything, then all of a sudden they've scored.
I kind of built this when FIFA came out last year. The meta of the game is always like speed on the wings, cut back your crosses into the box. I built this anti-meta team, which was like put the best crossers no matter how slow they were, and put like Peter Crouch and whoever the best header in the game was, and I would just try and find it out on the wing, rock it in, and nobody knew how to stop it because it was just like nothing you ever play against. I feel like DC is doing that in real life. Like no one is really going to be as direct as that team is, but the fact that you have two wingers, one on each side, that is great at crossing, can get into space, and then you have Christian Benteke. And hey, soccer is a game of scoring more goals than your opponent. So 3-2, 3 points on the road for DC in Atlanta. I think they'll take it.
Yeah, they definitely will. And they're in a good playoff position right now. They are in a good spot. I like what I'm seeing from DC right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other teams or stories stick out to you so far this season?
I think that the Cascadian teams all have sort of an interesting thing going on where Seattle's down this year. I think Portland's probably a lot better than their record indicates, and Vancouver's been a surprisingly good team this year. So Cascadia could be a really interesting trio of teams this year where Seattle being down gives an opportunity for the other two to really shine. I do really like Portland. I've always really liked the culture Portland's built around at least their fans. And I always kind of cheer for them to do better than they have these past few years. So Evander, what's his last name? Evander Ferreira.
He's a single name.
Yeah, Evander. Has been so good, but he's hurt, and since he's been hurt, Portland's been pretty bad. If he comes back and is healthy, I think that Portland could be a top 3 team in the Western Conference this year.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Neville. He's not the only Manchester United legend. We got Chris Armas as well in charge of Colorado. They were up 2-0 last night on San Jose. San Jose, horrible team so far this season. They were up 2-0. San Jose won the game 3-2 on the road against Chris Armas' team. But Chris Armas' Colorado Rapids, they made signings like Chris Armas, like Zach Steffen, Georgi Mihalovic, and Cole Bassett, all coming back to
Vines.
Colorado. Sammy Vines. Like, this team is much better than people are going to give them credit for because Chris Armas is a meme at this point. But like they're solidly in playoff contention.
Yeah. No, and they looked really good up until they didn't last night. And Cole Bassett had a really good game. Georgi Mihailovic, 2 assists. That team has got some talent. They're going to do some damage in that Western Conference this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, running away with it, not just in the Eastern Conference, but in the Supporter Shield. Inter Miami, we have to talk about them. Lionel Messi. His team isn't just running away with it. I think like he's an actual real life cheat code, Tom. I had my doubts that Inter Miami Lona would work out, but like I'm going to hold my hands up. This team is insane. Not just the 4 prior Barcelonians. What would you say?
I guess. I don't know.
The 4 Barcelonians. But Rojas has really impressed me. They have Benjamin Kremeshi, a young American talent. I mean, they have Drake Callender in goal. This team is kind of not just the Messi show.
They're not, but the times when the Messi show has been derailed, it's been obvious that they've built around a lot of old, slow players. And that's still, I think, their biggest issue. I think a lot of my questions regarding Miami's stability long-term is whether or not they can find a good midfield trio that works, because some of these midfields they've been running out have been hilarious. I think my favorite is Julian Gressel and Sergio Busquets going back together as a dual 6, which is just hilarious because it's got to be the slowest midfield in the history of MLS. It showed a couple times this season.
I will not allow any Julian Gressel slander on this show.
As an Atlanta fan, love Julian Gressel, but man, is he slow. And there's been times when Miami, they turn the ball over, and all of a sudden, there's just, Sergio Busquets is not the person you want defending a counterattack 1v3. Like, he's just
Very
getting
true.
cooked every single time the ball turns over. And so, while the offense has been spectacular, I do wonder about Miami's defensive ability. Can they keep winning these games 5-2 after going down 2-0?
Listen, Tom, like I just said with whoever I was just talking about, I don't even remember because there's so many teams in MLS. This is a game where you score more than your opponent. It's like I'll put all of my coaching knowledge into that one sentence. If you score more than the other team, you win the game and you're good to go.
I guess it helps when Messi's putting up 2.5 goals and assists per 90. Like,
yeah, exactly. I looked at the stats. I'm sure you did too before we were going to have this conversation. And the per 90 statistics for Messi are like, you knew it was going to be crazy, but some of the like more than 2 goals and assists per 90, that's just a ridiculous production, even for the greatest of all time.
It's insane. I've never seen anything like it. And he's not even trying that hard to do it. He's kind of just walking around, and then all of a sudden he pops up and something happens.
Yeah, it's wild. Let's talk about...
Suarez are going to set a record for the least number of steps taken per goal contribution this year.
I did think it was funny watching the Montreal game last night between them and Inter Miami. And it's like, there's not 3 lines in Inter Miami. There's 2. There's defense and midfield. Like the defense of Montreal could just walk around dribbling Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi. Like they're not even trying to win the ball back in the forward position. You basically have 8 defenders, but somehow, again, it's working. 5-2, 6-2, 3-2, doesn't matter.
It's must-see television. Whatever it's doing, it's working. It's really, really entertaining to watch Miami games these days.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about who's going to be the MVP other than Messi in 1 second. But I do have to say, there was a moment last night where Toronto FC and NYC FC after the game, Sean Johnson and the team, like the bench is cleared basically. They're in a baseball stadium anyway, so I'm going to use that as the metaphor for what happened. And after the game, John Herdman, the Toronto FC manager, spoke about how apparently the NYCFC coach, Nick Cushing, punched a Toronto player. Now, these are just allegations right now, and that's quite an allegation to make, Tom. And I wouldn't want to mess with Nick Cushing because he does look like a bouncer outside of a nightclub. But talk to me a little bit about this, because that's a pretty serious allegation where it's not just suspension. Like, you punch a player as a coach, you're not coming back from that.
No, that's like banned for life level of stuff in MLS. That's a crazy allegation to make, and apparently there's no security footage of this despite it happening in a player tunnel, and I don't really understand how this happens or why it was brought up as a reference, like a 2-month-old incident. Why is this just now coming out? I'm really confused about this. The fight was entertaining. I don't think I've ever seen Sean Johnson get mad like that before, and he's kind of a scary guy to have running at you. So whatever was said was bad, and I what are you making of this? Is this something that we should be like taking like more seriously than just allegations right now? Why even bring it up?
Yeah, this feels weird because you mentioned something I forgot to mention in the initial story, is that the event in question actually happened a few months ago when they first met this season. And the fight last night is apparently a continuation of that and something that was said to Sean Johnson. This is what I make of it. First of all, if it happened, why wouldn't you have talked about it initially when it happened? Because that's quite a big thing to talk about or to make an allegation of. Like, you want to make your player gets punched by another coach, that's going to the MLS office like within the hour.
Yeah.
So to bring it up 2 months later when nobody else knew about it and there's no footage of it, I think that brings me to the flip side of the story, which is John Herdman. Like, what are you doing? If I'm not saying he's lying, but like, he's not coming out looking like the better person in all of this either.
No, I mean, there's no better person in this. This is the pettiest drama that I think I've seen in a long time in MLS. But it's one of those things that makes you question his suitability for a club coach and also makes you question his, you know, leadership skills in some ways. Like, this is just a ridiculous way to retaliate to a fight allegation, is to bring something like this up. So
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of it.
I mean, as an agent of chaos myself, Tom, I don't like being in chaos or drama, but I do like watching train wrecks from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love this right now. I love that
Mm-hmm.
this is happening. I love that MLS has personalities that can get into fights. I love that we can um, say that another coach punched a player. I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't love that it happened, but I love that we can talk about it on our show.
It does
And
make
if John
MLS
Erdman's in the middle of all of that, then fine.
makes him a perfect member of the MLS, you know, sphere. It's MLS is just such a chaotic, crazy league that this just sort of fits right in with everything else about the league. It just sort of feels like a continuation of all of the just the wacky stuff that goes on in the games.
Yeah, it's on brand. It's MLS after dark. It's everything we love about this. And I think you just nailed it on the head too, because like over and above all of these other stories, the drama, everything that's happening, I feel like just how competitive the league is this year. That's what I love to see. Like the parity is awesome. It doesn't matter. Like even Inter Miami is not just blowing every team out of the water. They're winning 3-2. They were down 2-0 to the New York Red, or down 1-0 to the New York Red Bulls before they won 6-2. Um, like great teams that we thought at the beginning of the season are at the bottom of the table. Bad teams that we thought at the beginning of the season, like DC, are like solidly in playoff spots. It's just you don't get this with every other league. The fact that you can turn on the Atlanta United game or I can turn on the New York Red Bulls game, and I have a hunch, but I never know where it's going.
Oh, absolutely not. And it's kind of what makes you MLS so special is some of these roster rules that a lot of people, I think, more and more so are complaining about are what makes MLS such a fun league to watch, because these teams are so fundamentally evenly matched that it makes for a really exciting league to watch. You just never know what's going to happen week to week, especially in a sport with as much variance as soccer. So I kind of, in a way, like some of the roster rules and hope that as the league grows and develops, they don't remove these things that are keeping parity in place, because it just makes MLS so entertaining and unique.
Yeah, and the roster rules weren't everything that changed over the last season to this one, Tom, because we now have something else that I love, which is that the referees, after they review a VAR decision, come out onto the field and, like in the NFL, they turn their microphone on and they tell everyone in the stadium and the audience watching on TV what their decision was and why.
Mm.
What do you think about this change?
I love it. It's nice for transparency. It also, as a person in stands, I haven't actually been to a game since they've started doing this, which I'm really interested to see how it goes. I don't know if you've been to a lot of MLS games. You're no stranger to all of a sudden something happens, and then you're just standing there watching a video screen of the referee just standing there with the finger to their ear. And you're like talking to everyone around you, like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? What are they even reviewing here? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a red card's produced, or a goal is given, or a penalty is shown, and you have no idea why or what they're actually reviewing or what rule was actually broken, because there's no explanation. And so this kind of, at least from the point of view in the stands, I think makes it easier to, follow what's happening in the game. Because in other sports, in football, it's pretty easy to tell what they're going to review on a given play. If the play goes to review, you're like, okay, that guy's out of bounds. Like, or, okay, are they reviewing whether or not that he actually made this catch? And you can sit there and debate with people next to you as to what's going on. But in soccer, they could be reviewing anything for the last 45 seconds. Like, what are they going for? Yeah. And there's so many players, like so many things happening all over the place. You never know exactly where on the field the thing happened. So I that's a long-winded way of saying I really like it.
I completely agree with you. Like, at least at home, you have some semblance of what's being reviewed. Like, they'll go back, they'll show the replays on TV. But in the stadium, sometimes it can be, the play goes on for 45 seconds, it goes out of bounds. Then there's a 5-minute stop while the referee has his hands to his ear. Then he's going to the box. Then he's reviewing it again. The fact that we have some transparency into what they were reviewing, what the decision was, I think that's awesome, not just for people that are watching at home, but also in the stands. Okay, The two last topics I want to cover, Tom, are going to be who wins the MVP other than Messi. So essentially, who's going to come second, and then who's the first manager that's going to get fired this season. So let's talk about MVP other than Messi first. My first pick, we talked about him, Christian Benteke, 11 goals and 1 assist. We talked about his aerial duel wins, 134 aerial duel wins. The next best one is a center back with 54. I mean, this guy is insane. Insane. 11 goals and 1 assist for forward through 12 games. Like, come on, that's MVP level.
That's yeah. I mean, he's got to be in the conversation. I wonder if he can keep it up. If teams start finding a solution for this, which I'm not sure there is one, to just coaching a guy to be tall. So I do think he'll be in the conversation at the end of the year. If DC sustains this, for sure he will have to be. There are other players, though. I think, we talked about Real Salt Lake, but we did it without mentioning the name Chicho Arango. And I think that you have to talk about how good his season has been. Because frankly, there's not a lot of production on that Utah team, this Real Salt Lake team outside of him. Like, there's just, there's players like Diego Luna who are doing something. But he's kind of doing a lot of this himself, and he's just sort of scoring for fun right now. He's also on 11 goals.
Yeah. I mean, if we talk about MVP specifically as most valuable player, and if you take that to mean like without you, your team would not be anywhere close to where they are. I do think actually like Chicho Arango and Christian Benteke are pretty like close to Messi, at least in terms of what they mean to their club's success.
Yes, I agree. I think that, having a player like that who is your entire team it's truly the definition of MVP. Now, Messi's stats, as we said, are otherworldly, so like you can't even begin to quantify the effect he has on his team.
What else is there?
But yeah, those two players definitely have that level of sort of gravitas for their team where they are the ones doing basically all of the work to keep their teams afloat. And yeah, I don't think that there's any other team that has as much of, a load on one player as those two teams do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention two other players, but I think they're probably a step below what we just talked about, just because of what you said. Like, so I'll talk about Lucho Acosta for a second. 6 man of the match performances in 12 games, 6 goals, 6 assists. He was crucial in the away match for the Hellas Real Derby last night. He's also in the process of getting his U.S. citizenship, so some USMNT fans are twiddling their fingers, just hoping that he's able to do something for the U.S. men's national team. But I think from what you just said in terms of that perspective, Lucho Acosta is important to Cincinnati, but he's not that whole team. The team would not crumble without him. They're in second in the East right now. They'd probably fall to third or fourth. Like, that's a really solid, great team. He's just having an insane season so far as well.
Yeah. Oh, he's just a fantastic player. He was really good last year too. I think he is the reigning MVP, right?
Yeah, he is.
So, this is just a continuation
he could go back to back
of a great season from him last year. So he's definitely in the conversation. A name I'd throw out is Ricky Puig of LA Galaxy. Yep. I don't know how much Galaxy you've been watching. I tend to really like the MLS After Dark games, so I watched that Galaxy game last night. He's so good. He can just put a ball on a dime from anywhere in the attacking third. He makes that Galaxy team go. I think they probably win that game over RSL last night if Paintsill has anywhere near a decent game. But
yeah, Ricky Puig is one of the best highlight reel makers of MLS.
He's kind
Tom, I'm going to defer to you on this.
Yeah.
Having a 14-month-old child does not play nicely with staying up after 10 p.m.
Yeah. No.
I'm saying.
Yeah, fair.
I'm in bed. I'm asleep.
I mean, did you see the I don't know if you saw a highlight of the assist he had to tie the game, but he put in a picture-perfect cross, literally 2 steps in front of the goalie, onto Miguel Berry's foot for the game equalizer on the last kick of the match. Like, spectacular ball. And he was dangerous the whole game. He does this every single time we watch Galaxy play. The offense runs through him. He makes so much happen in the final third that I think this team is probably mid-table, if not still in that wooden spoon conversation, if it's not for Puig being what he is this year.
Having been MLS fans for so long, like us, it feels weird to even consider LA Galaxy as like the last 5 years of what they've been.
Yeah.
To think that they're in the wooden spoon conversation just like it feels wrong coming out of my mouth. That is a team that I'm always scared of. Them and like Columbus Crew for some reason in my head since I was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
They've been the scariest teams in the league.
Yeah, my roommate's a newer MLS fan, and last night I was like talking to him about this game as we were watching it. I'm like, yeah, I kind of hate the Galaxy. It's sort of every MLS fan should, but I want an interesting game right now, and they're losing, so I'm probably cheering for them to tie this game up. But
Yeah.
on principle, I kind of hate the Galaxy because they're so good usually. So this feels weird.
They're the Patriots of 2000s. They're the LA Dodgers of now. Like,
Yeah.
that is the Galaxy and what they've done to all of us in MLS.
Yeah.
One other name that I'm going to throw out, and just as a homer, Emil Forsberg has 4 goals and 2 assists so far for the New York Red Bulls. They're currently 3rd in the East, which, like, that's pretty surprising to me. Just being a fan of them, I did not expect them anywhere close to that. Out of 10 matches, he's been rated 7 or higher by FootMob, and in 5 of those, he's been rated 8 or higher. I just think what he adds to the New York Red Bulls is so different from anything that they've had since Thierry Henry, just being so dangerous on the ball. So I don't think his production is up there with Lucho Acosta, Christian Benteke, Messi, Chicho Arango, but I do think as the season progresses, he could get there if he starts to add more goals and assists. The importance for him and his team, I think, is there.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, Tom. Is Gonzalo Pineda on this list? Who is the first manager to get fired in MLS this season?
I said this before we started, but I'm going back to a very old beef I have with one of the managers in MLS since I moved to Nashville.
It's personal.
In 2018, started following them their first year of USL, and Gary Smith was the manager, and I hated watching that team play. And then living there, they hired him for the MLS team, and I was so mad because I had to watch more Gary Smith ball. 5 years later, they are still so bad to watch. I hate watching Gary Smith ball. It is just so boring. There is nothing fun about it. That he's never been able to coach a striker to do anything besides be tall. But he's never had a good enough striker to do that. So I just hate watching his teams play. Nashville's terrible this year. They can't get anything out of their normally really solid players. I get they've had some injuries, but even their back line's not producing the same level of, impossible to score on that they have in the past. I'm just done with Gary Smith. He is a product of a bygone era in MLS. He needs to go.
I love that at the beginning of the season before, like in the preseason era, Gary Smith was talking about how like they're changing up the tactics. They're going to be more attacking. They'll possess the ball more. And he's still just the football terrorist. Like Thomas Tuchel is memed for being the football terrorist, but I actually think that Gary Smith is the MLS equivalent of that.
He's the great value version of Mourinho. Like his teams play in that way. There's nothing more emblematic of him than Nashville has tied the record for draws in a season twice or come close to it. Like it's ridiculous how few goals they score. It's brutal football to watch.
And that, like you mentioned it, they have such a good team in terms of their players.
Yeah.
Like, imagine what that team could do, how dangerous they would be with a proper coach at the helm.
Yeah. I never understood the hire to begin with. I get he won the 2010 MLS Cup, but he did that at the beginning of Kai Kamara's career. Like, the league has changed since then.
It's a different league, too, yeah.
Like, why are we still doing this, Nashville?
I don't know. They want that rage. They feed on that fire that you're feeding them, Tom. I'm going to throw out 2 names we kind of talked about already, but Caleb Porter and Gonzalo Pineda, I think, have to be on this list. I also think that Phil Neville at Portland is probably not going to be the first to be fired, but he's going to be on the hot seat. Like, he doesn't have a pedigree or winning production in any of the clubs that he's coached so far. Inter Miami didn't do anything under him either. Like, I didn't really understand this hire at Portland, but now they're bottom of the table.
Yeah.
Like I think because he's new and because of who he is, he's going to get some time, but his results are not better than Gary Smith or Caleb Porter at this point.
No, I agree. Although I think if you're going to the Western Conference, you can't not mention Luchi Gonzalez in San Jose because they are bad this year too.
It hurts to say.
Yeah. I think that, Neville's in a bad spot, but like we said, Evander was so good at the start of the season and he is hurt. When he comes back, I think that changes the whole dynamic of Portland. They've also done some crazy things this year. They have taken it to LAFC twice. They haven't won either of those games, but they have outplayed them twice. So I do think that there is some element of Portland is super banged up, as we've seen with some of these other coaches we're talking about. But I think Nashville and San Jose stick out to me because they're just bad. Like this year.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. You are right in that sense, but also if I'm a fan, it's like, oh, we missed the playoffs, but we almost beat LAFC twice. Like, that doesn't feel great either.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. Like, I think in the same way that Caleb Porter is going to get some leeway because of who he is and how many players he's missing at really important spots, I think probably the same for Phil Neville. But I hope for your sake, Tom, that Gary Smith is number one on this hit list.
I'm hoping so. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked or honestly disappointed if Pineda goes. I think that team is just too talented to be struggling in the attacking third. Especially, Jean De Silva's a big loss, but the most of the attacking core is healthy on that team. Almada cannot be looking this bad. Almada hasn't scored a free kick this year. Atlanta hasn't scored from a set piece at all this year. They can't. That's a wild stat. Like, something is wrong in the attack there, and at some point, your defensive woes can't explain all of it and has to come back on Pineda.
I think something that has to go into these conversations is what the expectations are and how much the fans can impact some of these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Caleb Porter in New England, like, that's not a historically fervent or like ravenous fan base.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to Atlanta United or Portland, like, those are fan bases that want to win now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as a rebuilding year. So I think in that sense, like, they're probably a little more on the hot seat, a little more in danger than clubs that don't necessarily have to hear that or listen to that fan voice all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially in Atlanta, where you are used to drawing 45,000 people a game, if you start losing, that attendance figure goes down fast, and that's a huge hit to the club. So you don't really have much of a choice but to act fast in a situation like that where your entire club is built around that huge stadium you play in.
All right, Tom, I think that is about it for our MLS episode. And guys, by the way, we're doing this because the European season is wrapping up, so we're pretty much going to cover all of our Yanks abroad in one episode. But we just wanted to kind of give a preview of what's happening in Major League Soccer in the domestic league this season so far. So I hope that kind of brought everybody in, what the big storylines are, the players, the coaches, the teams to watch. Tom, anything else on MLS or life? What do you have to say to the people?
A couple things on MLS and life. I'm going to go down to MLS Next Pro, and I'm going to make a plug for a game. And Jake, this is a big plug for you too. July 11th, Philadelphia Union 2 hosting Chattanooga FC. 1-2 in the Eastern Conference. Kevin Sullivan is slated to start getting more playing time on his new whopping MLS Next Pro record contract. That game is going to be a banger of a game. If you only watch one MLS Next Pro game this year, that should be the game you watch, because I think it should be the best game of the year in the league. So making a plug for that on the domestic side, on the lower league side right now. Life, keep grinding, whatever you're doing. I have basically done nothing but work these last few weeks, and I'm just excited to get a chance to take a break and take a chance to talk about MLS, because this has just been a fun study break. I have my candidacy exam in 8 days, and really gearing up for it and getting ready to go.
Let's go, dude. Awesome. Well, good luck with that. I hope everything goes well with the defense. And yeah, we'll see everyone next time on It's Called Soccer Podcast. Thanks so much for watching.
See you guys.
Peace.